thank you everybody for joining on this Thursday evening for the latest episode, as we call it, of Must See Yale. I think most of you know, courtesy of the Yale Alumni Association, and also a program that we offer, which is called Careers Life in Yale. We all, as alumni, benefit from the opportunity to sit with a glass of wine in our pajamas if we want, or not if we don't, on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for really, really interesting topics. They fall into four categories. They fall into the categories of the STEM report, the human experience, life and personal growth, and career pivots. And tonight, you'll hear from Shawn Cheng, who will be introduced by one of my fellow alumni leaders, Stephanie Grilli. And we're delighted to have Shawn here. We're also, of course, delighted to have all of you present, too. I want to make sure we get to the dialogue that we're going to have between Stephanie and Shawn and to your questions very quickly. So I'd just like to hand this off very quickly to Jeff Feldman, again, one of our fellow alumni leaders who can talk about the fact that we have these four channels, and then over to Stephanie and we will get started.
Great. Thanks, Steve. And really just a minute, it's always a pleasure seeing everybody here. We get a good batch of repeats and we get good batch of new people, and it's just a nice community we've developed over the year. We do have a couple more for the academic year. Next week, we've got a program on quantum computing. And then the week after, we've got a program on career pivots, focusing on retirement. We skip a week because of reunion, and then we have one more show on the STEM report into June. We are thinking of summer programming, so probably won't be weekly, but keep your eyes and ears open. We'd love to keep this going in some fashion, and we'll be announcing those ideas in the next few weeks, I would think. But we'll come back to you, Stephanie. Why don't you run with the show?
And Jeff, just one more thing, Stephanie, before we start. So many of you on the call are, of course, alumni of Yale. We have a wonderful mentorship program on Cross Campus. That's our online community, crosscampus.yale.edu. And we need even more mentors. We've already created 1,000+ pairings of mentors, meaning alums, with mentees, meaning students. And we'd love to have you join that cohort of mentors. So please consider going to crosscampus.yale.edu. Stephanie, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks, Jeff. Shawn is going to share his story with us, but of course, this is a conversation series, really. And so what you should do if you have a question or a comment, please put it in the chat. And in fact, if it goes along while Shawn is talking, I may just ask him, or he'll pick it up in the chat. But otherwise, what will happen is we'll call on you to ask your question or make your comment. The very nature of this is exchange among alumni, with Shawn tonight being sort of the master storyteller, which he is in both words, but particularly in visual form. Of course, if you signed up for tonight, that Shawn is a multifaceted artist. And in fact, he probably had a very sort of unique Yale College experience. I mean, I was thinking about how many of us maybe in junior high, high school, made pictures on our pads or even drew cartoons, but how many of us actually sort of made a life and a career out of that. And in fact, I do want to hand it over to Shawn right now so that he can tell us his story as to starting off how he grew up in Taiwan and somehow or another made his way to Long Island and to Yale and beyond. So Shawn, if you would take it.
Okay, hi, thanks, Stephanie. Hi, everyone, I'm Shawn. So I guess let's start off with a little biographical background. Like Stephanie mentioned, I was born in Taiwan, and I moved here when I was 8. So I had enough of a childhood in Taiwan that I felt like I had established a sort of personal identity when I came here, and then when I arrived here in America, first in Queens and then later to Long Island, I had to kind of recreate that identity. And I think one of the things that has stayed with me until today is the importance of narrative and of characters in that process. I always loved to draw as a kid, but it wasn't until when I came to America that I really started pursuing it as an endeavor. I was given the choice in 3rd grade if I wanted to continue piano lessons or start drawing lessons, and I very quickly chose the drawing lessons, and I think that was a good decision. And I think what I mean by stories playing a big role in my life is that that was one way that I was able to make the transition between being a foreigner in this country to kind of assimilating into the culture. When I arrived, I didn't speak a word of English, and one of the ways I could communicate with my classmates was by drawing pictures at lunchtime, and there were characters that I knew from my old home that the kids in my new home recognized. There were a lot of He-Man, Transformers, and some Japanese comics characters from Dragon Ball Z. Everyone knew that. It was sort of a universal language that we could share. So that bridged the language barrier for the first year or two that I was in America, and then at the same time I was kind of picking up a new visual language of the things that were in vogue here, most notably the Ninja Turtles, I guess. Yeah, and then it just kept going from there, and eventually I wound up at Yale, and then afterwards I was able to pursue a career in the visual arts in kind of different ways, but I think that's an opportunity that I don't know if I would have had I stayed in Taiwan. So I think that coming to America was definitely a very essential part of me being an artist today. So,
do you want to start showing your images?
Yeah. Well, let's start with the first slide, Kate. Cool. So I chose this image to start with because it represents sort of another transitional point for me. This was a painting that I made my last year at Yale. So it was in one way kind of a culmination of my experience artistically at Yale, and then also the kind of starting point of what I did after school. And I think there are formal things in this painting that I return to later on, and there are kind of thematic subjects that I also return to later. This is a painting in a series that I made about the Wizard of Oz. So one of the things that I do in my work is I take existing narratives and I kind of use them as a starting point or as a basic structure to build an additional world or extension on. So in this series, so this was a series of 6 paintings, and you have to imagine them kind of 6 in a row, side by side. So the middle strip is the events of the movie The Wizard of Oz. So those are all screenshots from the actual film, and then the top third of the painting, the first 2 rows in this image, are the story of the particular character, in this case the Tin Man, what he was doing before Dorothy came to Oz. And the middle strip is what Dorothy did in Oz, which all the characters share. And then the bottom third is what happens to the character after Dorothy leaves Oz. So I like taking these existing narratives and sort of building upon them, maybe like a filmmaker or a costume designer or a set designer might do, is creating a world around that basic text. And I think it's an interesting way for me to do kind of character design and also world building and kind of inject a little bit of humor, I think, in the story as well. Yeah.
Shawn, you were saying that, when you were at Yale and in the art department, that you weren't quite in sync with what the general sort of tenor of, the painting department or art department might have been.
Yeah. So So this will kind of segue nicely into what I did directly after school. So like I said, this was these were paintings I made my senior year of school as a painting major, and they weren't especially well received because it wasn't, this sort of painting is not considered serious painting, I think, or it wasn't considered serious painting when I was in school. And number one, it's figurative, and number two, it's narrative, right? And number three, it's drawn in this graphic manner that is kind of representational and cartoonish. And the word graphic when I was in school was code word for very bad in poor taste, kind of. And that's, I think that word definitely describes this work. So by the time I left school, I was discouraged from making work like this, especially in the context of quote unquote serious painting. So Kate, if you could go to the next slide. So after graduation, a few of my Yale friends and I, you can see their names across the bottom there, we all graduated around the same time and eventually found ourselves in Brooklyn. And we all had the same, a very kind of similar experience. We were all kind of graphic painters and drawers, and our work was not received enthusiastically at school. So what we wanted to do after school was we wanted to try our hand at independent comics. So I forgot to mention during school, I worked on the Yale Herald, which, if you'll remember, is the alternative weekly newspaper. So that publication had a comics section, and while I was there, Matt Weigel, who was a few years ahead of me, he had kind of turned it into a very cool experimental space where you can play with the form of the sequential comic and make things that told complex or even abstract stories that didn't follow the standard kind of like 1, 2, 3 panel punchline kind of sequence of newspaper comics. So I worked on the Herald for many years at school, and by the time I left school, that felt like the most fruitful part of my artistic endeavor. So my friends and I, we formed this comics collective, and we called it Partyka. And the idea was that we would band together and go to comics conventions, indie comics conventions together, and we would sell our handmade comics under this banner of Partyka. And I think what we were trying to do is later on, I found this really nice summation by Linda Barry, who described her art class as a place where you do solitary work together. And I think that's a really apt description of what we were doing, because comics making and painting are very inherently kind of lonely endeavors. And this was a way for us to kind of commiserate and kind of pool our resources. So one form that this took was a website that we created. This was in 2003. So this was before all these automated blogging platforms were there. So we coded all of these by hand, and we updated it every day, which was you know, we were quite proud of that we were able to publish something every day.
Quick question for you. Did you work on one of these individually and then go week to week? Or are you saying as a group you worked on something like this?
So on the website we would take turns. So every day it would be a new drawing from one of us, and then separate from that we would be working on kind of full comic books. They're called mini comics. So they're sort of like, they're coming out of the zine tradition, where it's mostly handmade, photocopied, not professionally printed publications. And then we would go to these comics festivals where we would have a table, and then there would be hundreds of other tables of people doing the same thing. And Kate, if you can go to the next slide. So actually one of the things that became kind of our calling card was our insistence on craft in our work, because I think a lot of mini comics creators, they viewed their mini comics, which you know, you would go and run off 100 copies at Kinko's. They viewed it as sort of a medium step to like getting it professionally published. So the form of that handmade comic was not important, but for us it was important as an object. So we actually so at this time, this was before color printing became much more affordable. So color was a real premium in these conventions, and we would show up with these. We would silk screen our covers, and that was kind of a real head turner. So during this time, I made a bunch of small mini comics. They would run, you know, 30 to 50 pages each, and we would print off runs of 50 or 100 and bring them, put them in our cars and drive, you know, up to Toronto, out to Ohio, and down to you know, Georgia and Virginia to sell them on these long weekend road trips. So I continued using folktales and mythology as a source material. So this one is based on a Japanese folktale. And Kate, if you can go to the next one. This one is also based on another Japanese folktale of the monkey and crab. And so you know, I was working through these ideas of taking these narratives and kind of distilling them to these very simple images that can be mass produced, essentially. So in these images, we had, so in comics making and in these works, the key is to make something that is simple enough that you can replicate it many times. So whatever you wanted to draw as a comics character, you had better be prepared to draw it like many times. So that was, I sort of took that as a challenge. So in the top two panels, that was, I wanted to make something that was very visually dense, and the price I paid for that was that I had to draw these leaves many times. So that that particular composition of the monkey sitting in the tree occurs a few times in the story. So I had to draw that exact configuration many times. But I think the kind of visual density is something that appealed to me, and you'll see more of that in later work, I think. So Kate, if you can go to the next slide. This is yet another mini comic that I did in that era. And this was based on a bunch of trickster type characters having this kind of transformation face off. And this, I think this one is interesting because it was one of the works where I was scouring these books of folk tales and other stories, and not finding a story that struck my fancy, that I really liked. And I remember thinking very often, why I wish this would have happened instead of how it actually happened in the story. And then I realized that I can just make up my own stories using these basic archetypes of the trickster and these kind of transformation characters.
Andrew Ritten has a comment that you'd like to make about the books? Andrew?
Yes. I'm not Andrew. I'm Andrew's daughter, but but thank you for letting me be here. I'm just noticing, because these works, and you mentioned about how you were silk printing these, and which is not an easy thing to do. And I in college grew up in in the zine scene, but it was very cheap with the it was like done very cheaply so it could be as distributed as possible. But I noticed that you were focusing a lot on just the physical object of the work itself, and not just like the material, not just like, the subject matter or the story that you're telling, but physically making the book itself a piece of art in itself, which I find really fascinating. These are hand sewn. That I'm glad you picked up on that. So I think one of our things as Partica was that we were all kind of very adamant about the element of craft in our art, which also was another thing that was a little bit frowned upon when I was in school for art, because that seemed like you're not an artist, you're an artisan if you are concentrating on kind of like doing the physical labor. But I think my compatriots in Partica, we all felt like the addition of this, we called it like TLC, was important in how our mini comics came together. And I think actually, if you walked around the comics and conventions at that time, our table was fairly unique in how kind of these objects are much more kind of polished than other tables.
And Shawn, I'm asking, at the risk of showing that myself as one who doesn't get it, right? Is part of this also monetization? Are you trying to sell these, or is just sort of the delivery of it, this personal satisfaction to be in that community?
It was a, monetization was an element of it, right? We would go to these shows and we would sell these books, and sometimes we would make a profit, right? But it wasn't a sustainable business model, right? Like, because when I say we would make a profit, that's not counting the cost of labor really in any of this. So I think this was we all knew this was kind of a way for us to continue making art in a time where we were all kind of struggling with the kind of quote unquote serious art that we were
we went to school for, and this venue felt like it was the most free and least kind of fraught with landmines.
Very,
Yeah.
yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you.
Because you're also working as a graphic designer at the time, right?
Yeah. So throughout all this, I had a day job as a graphic designer for very corporate web related things, and that's sort of the third prong of my visual art career, I would say. So one is painting, the other is comics, and then the third is design, and they sort of they're all sort of intertwined, because I think a lot of my experience in design and the digital world found their way into what we did in Partica. For example, I coded the website that we were updating every day, and I think some of my sense of typography and layout and composition are all coming out of this day job that was at least art adjacent. Yeah. So Kate, if you can go to the next slide. So we did the comic circuit for close to 10 years, I think. And Giant Robot was a gallery and a store and pop culture magazine, and so it was attracting a lot of artists who worked kind of in street art and in graffiti and skateboard art and illustration, right? Like so things that were not quote unquote serious art, and I started sending my stuff to be shown there, and there was kind of an energy and an enthusiasm and kind of a joy in the creation of this art and in the kind of consumption of this art that I found very energizing. And then I started making these prints. This is a 11 by 17 print, silk screen, and then and Xerox. I started thinking that I could picture this as a painting, and it was the first time in years that I could kind of picture what a painting that I would make would look like. And so my initial idea was that I liked the kind of the activity and the density and kind of the interweaving of flat patterns with these figures intertwined with each other. But I wanted to achieve the kind of density that I mentioned with the monkey slide. So what I thought was I would take this general kind of idea, but increase the canvas, kind of basically zoom out, right? So keep the level of detail and minutia, but just zoom out from the picture. So Kate, if you go to the next slide, you'll see this is my the set of paintings I made after that, where I tried to make something as crazy as possible, and drawing on all my love of craft and process as well. Yeah, and I think one of the big thoughts I had when I was making these paintings was that I wanted to make images that if 8-year-old me, so the boy who was just coming over to America from Taiwan, I wanted to make that 8-year-old boy be amazed, right? So I wanted to achieve some kind of visceral reaction with my paintings, and one way I thought I could achieve that is with this kind of activity and density, and as my usual MO, this was adapted from an existing text. This is from Popol Vuh, which is the Mayan kind of sacred text, and this is the kind of battle in the underworld that is described in there. What else did I want?
Marianne, do you have a question about the detail?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. And I'm glad we had the delay because it really gave me time to just look a little more closely and find things I would have never found. And I never before tonight would have appreciated this kind of art. But now I'm going to start looking for it because it's so beautiful. I'm wondering what do you draw with or paint with to get the fine detail?
I use a pen, just a regular rollerball pen to create the line drawings. So with these, what I did was I created a black and white line drawing at the same scale, which is 3 feet by 4 feet, and then I convert that line drawing into a silk screen, and then I silk screen that onto the canvas. So it's a kind of a direct transfer of my drawing, because at this time I felt like I had much more control and facility with my drawing than with my brushwork. So that was why I kind of took that convoluted path to creating these images. In my newer work, I'm trying to kind of cut out that extended process and try to, so that the final image I make is a little closer to kind of the initial act of creation, or like the idea coming out.
And do you think it will always be done by hand, or in the far future would something like this be done 3D or digitally online, or?
You mean by me?
Or I'm just thinking, do you think people will always have the discipline and the patience to do the craft, the art that you do, not the craft, but the art?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, people are still, all these kind of modes of production that have been kind of superseded by more efficient ways of production. The old ways are kind of like elevated to more of an art form, I guess, right? So like even now, it just within the last 20 years, kind of the idea of developing a photograph in the darkroom, it has become kind of unthinkable, right? Like I don't think my kids comprehend the idea of kind of printing a photograph with film and with light, but I think then that becomes an art form that's separated from the immediate need for creating the image that way, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Shawn, do you want to show the next one?
Yeah, let's go to the next one. So this is the same series of paintings, and these are locusts from the Book of Revelations, and I think again it's the my love of kind of densities and kind of swarms coming to the fore here, and as you can see, I kind of cast a wide net in terms of the source material that I'm taking inspiration from. And I guess the thing, one thing I've said about my work before is that I'm curious about the idea of the monster, right, and kind of the grotesque, and the way that I tried to interpret the text is I tried to draw them in a way that's faithful to the text, but also I try to introduce an element that is strange or even awkward, and to me the kind of the combination of this familiar character or familiar idea or familiar form combined with some element that's awkward or strange. That strangeness is the part that's new. So that's something that I look for when I look at other visual art is something that seems a little bit off initially, and I think that's one thing that I try to achieve in my paintings.
Actually, in terms of the subject matter, Pan has made a comment. Pan, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, I have a little baby here, so sorry if it makes noise. Yeah, I'm just curious, Shawn, like, how do you suggest people to learn creativity? Is that a skill that can be learned? I'm from China and lived in Japan, so it's really nice to see your paintings.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for your question. I think, yeah, I don't know if everyone, I don't know if there's a way to learn creativity. I feel like everyone is creative, and the thing that we need to learn is kind of the stifling of the creativity. You know, like Stephanie mentioned before, she stopped drawing at some point in her childhood, and I think most people at some point convince themselves that they're not drawers, but I feel like everyone before that certain point is a drawer and is an artist and kids have no qualms about doodling and drawing. So I feel like the creativity is there. It's just a matter of allowing it to be expressed. And I actually see that in my own kids. I have two kids, 12 and 10, and in their artwork, I see a degree of fearlessness that I wish I could have in my own art. In the way that they draw something without really thinking about, is this the right way to draw a dog, right? It's just, oh, I drew this thing and it was meant to be a dog. And I think, so I think that the recognition of that strangeness, of that newness is the creativity. It's not necessarily the, coming up with the thing itself. It's like the acceptance of the thing that's weird.
So what's the next image?
Yeah, let's go to the next one.
Oh.
So this one we go back to Wizard of Oz. It was a subject matter I revisited after I made those big paintings, and I think it's a kind of it incorporates some of the ideas that I worked through in the paintings, like in terms of the visual density and the bright color palette, and kind of like designing these characters and then posing them in this kind of visually static world. So this was a really interesting project that I think I might even revisit at some point. I drew or I adapted each of the original Oz books. There were 14 original Oz books by Frank Baum, and I condensed each story into one kind of page. So on the left, there's The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, which is book 1, and then the next one is The Marvelous Land of Oz, which is book 2. And yeah, this was a great deal of fun to make because it's chock full of strange characters. And strange characters that have been interpreted many times throughout the years, and so it was an interesting challenge to kind of take a crack at it.
So actually, along those lines, that you were talking about the development of creativity, Steve actually has a question, or he's interested in hearing how you think you've changed or have been changed as a person by your career.
How I've changed as a
Or have
person.
you changed, or have you changed?
Yeah, you know, I think basically I haven't changed. It's sort of the similar to the idea of like your creativity hasn't changed. It's just like how you accept your creativity has changed. And so I feel like what has changed is my embracing of the things that or like my recognition of the things that excite me and motivate me as an artist that aren't necessarily what's acceptable as.
So, Shawn, it's Steve. So I'm interpreting that as your level of discernment has increased, and perhaps even your level of personal risk taking.
Yeah. So I think it's even risk taking in the way that, in the sense that like I've learned over the years that if you make something that you are excited about, it shows up in your work, and that is something that is that other people will pick up on, right? So and that's very difficult to synthesize. Like that's very difficult to fake. So I think something that is kind of lovingly made is going to find an audience. And I think that's what that's the biggest realization that I've had as an artist, and I think that's it's pretty liberating because it just means like you just need to find the thing that you enjoy doing, and if you do it and if you do it and enjoy it, other people, that energy is kind of contagious, I think.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Shawn.
Yeah, thank you. So Kate, if you go to the next slide, this is our last slide. So this was a more recent painting in the same kind of format, and this one is depicting another Japanese legend where the hero Yorimitsu slays this giant demon, and this one is now in the collection at the Worcester Art Museum, which is how I think Stephanie found my work, and I guess that's kind of a good way to circle back because this was a show that was guest curated by the owner of Giant Robot, who was, if you'll remember, the place I sent the prints that kind of led me back to painting again, and it was through Giant Robot that I now have a painting that I made the way I wanted to make is now in an institution of serious art. So I think that was a nice kind of.
What's the title
imagery.
of the painting? What's the title of the painting?
This one is called The Scourge Vanquished, I believe. So this demon was a scourge on the mountainside, and the hero came and decapitated it.
So I think it's interesting because you told me that you decided specifically not to get an MFA because you had no interest in teaching, but now you're teaching drawing at Lehman College.
Yeah.
And now you're having, paintings in museums. So I guess sometimes, the shortest distance between 2 points is a long line.
It's a winding, curvy path. Yeah. So I think Stephen, that kind of goes to show that like when you start to make something passionately, kind of good things will happen. And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned over the years is to kind of let that stuff take care of itself.
So actually, Helen has a comment and a question. And it's actually not a surprising question. Helen, do you want to ask your question?
Well, can you see me? Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I was just wondering, Sean, the work is lovely. And what I was just thinking, though, it reminded me of like animation as well. I know that when I see the different like panels and the dialogue and the action, I was just thinking of animation. My niece is actually going to study animation. So that's how I became more interested in that medium. And so I was wondering what your take was on that.
Yeah, I mean, these images, right? Like everything from my comics to my paintings to my prints, they're all very informed by animation for sure. Just the visual language is of animation, and I do think of my paintings in particular as still frames from a scene, from a movie, and so I think I think just compositionally they are different in that like these are post film and post video compositions, because they look like kind of in the middle of some action instead of a very set pose. So that's I think it's inextricably linked to animation. I love I have made some animations before, and I would love to make some of these into animations. But so far I haven't had the opportunity to. Partially because animation is a much different beast than comics making and painting. Like if I thought that drawing the same image over and over in a comic was tedious, like it's times 100 in the kind of animation that I'm interested in doing, which would be kind of the hand-drawn cell animation. So that I think it's either I would have to spend a lot of time on my own doing something, or I would have to collaborate with others. And so far I haven't found the right opportunity for it. And I'm a bit of a control freak when it comes to the images I make. Earlier I mentioned, well, we kind of created Partyka to do solitary work together, and that was kind of like as if it was a lamentable thing, but I think the solitary nature of the work is also sort of precious to me, if that makes sense. Like like being able to create something that's my vision is important. So I mean, definitely if the right opportunity came up, I would love to make animations.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And of course, some of your books and your other art, if one were to go to your website, would you be able to find out where they're available? If one wanted to acquire a Shawn Cheng?
Yeah. So yeah, you can. There are the mini comics are available on my website, and for kind of the paintings and other stuff, you can contact me directly from the website, I guess.
Because there was a person that submitted a few questions before the event, and one of the questions that they asked was, what do you see for your future? Where do you see your work going?
I mean, I wish I could see the where my work is going. That would be wonderful. But I've also learned that that the most interesting work comes when you don't know what is going to come out the other end. So that's sort of what I feel like is a shortcoming of this series of work, is that they're a bit too planned out, and it's lacking a little bit of the spontaneity that I really appreciate in other works of art. So I think in the future, I would like to be able to find more things and create more artworks where I'm not sure of the outcome. I think that's kind of where I want to go.
Right. So Kate, do you want to take us out of the slides? There. So do you think that your work and your career, you've mentioned in terms of going to Yale, what do you think that you've taken from Yale in terms of how you developed? I mean, you don't seem to have, I mean, you have your colleagues in Partica, but your pathway seems to be somewhat of an anomaly for a Yalie. How do you see that maybe your work or your career, your life, kind of, can be credited to Yale, or do you see yourself as part of the Yale experience?
Yeah, I definitely see myself as part of the Yale experience, and I would say that of course the most important thing I got out of Yale was that I left with this core group of like-minded art friends that we spent a lot of time kind of creating work together and kind of developing as artists together, and this is on top of the liberal arts education that I received at Yale, which was very important, and that was a very conscious choice. When I was looking at schools, I didn't want to go to a full-on art school. I wanted to have the liberal arts education, and I think that that's helped me kind of be exposed to the different kinds of texts and be able to kind of parse different kinds of texts. So I think just the exposure to the wide range of knowledge that's in the world, and also the chance to meet the people who I could share this artistic journey with. That's definitely the impact that Yale has had on me. And I think it's sort of like the prodigal son. So for years after, immediately after graduation, we sort of as Partica, we all sort of disowned Yale for a little bit, right? And we kind of went and did our own thing. And then I think as we mellowed out a bit and got older, we all kind of returned to seeing kind of the Yale heritage as an important part of our lives, which I definitely do presently.
Well, it's interesting because we hear about the football team, we hear about all the various athletic teams. Now we know that Yale actually has an art team.
Yeah.
That we can be proud of. So Steve, Jeff, do you want to let people know what's coming in the next few weeks? And we want to thank Shawn for sharing the visual images tonight. The scourge conquered or slain was quite an appropriate image for us in May of 2021. We should make that the symbol of us defeating COVID and all the other pandemics as we store our gas in our plastic bags. So thank you, Shawn. Thank you so much for sharing with us tonight. So.
Yeah. Stephanie and Shawn, thank you both so much. I think Jeff already outlined at the beginning the upcoming show, so I think we're good there. Again, we all hope that you will tune in Thursday nights at 8 o'clock. And we also hope that those of you who have not thought about being a mentor on crosscampus.yale.edu will do so. Have a great rest of the evening. And again, thanks so much, Shawn.
Great.
Thank you.